Here's a few interesting facts about the famous outlaw, Jesse James. During the 1869 bank robbery in Gallatin, the incident that first brought Jesse public notice as an outlaw, he shot and killed the bank's cashier in an act of revenge, thinking the man was Samuel Cox, commander of the pro-Union militia troops who had murdered guerrilla leader Bloody Bill Anderson in October 1864. After the deadly heist, an influential pro-Confederate newspaper editor in Missouri, John Edwards, befriended Jesse and went on to promote the former bushwhacker as a hero and defiant Southern patriot of the Reconstruction era. James himself wrote letters to newspapers in which he defended his actions. Through his articles and editorials, Edwards was responsible for helping to create the mythology of Jesse James as a Robin Hood figure who robbed the rich to give to the poor, a myth historians have debunked. Jesse was involved in a post-Civil War battle and was gravely wounded in the chest and taken to his uncle's boarding house in Harlem, Missouri. He was tended to by his first cousin, Zerelda Z. Mims, named after Jesse's mother. Jesse and his cousin then began a 9-year courtship that culminated in their marriage and 2 resulting children. After the James gang robbed a train at Gads Hill, Missouri in 1874, the Pinkerton Detective Agency was called in to hunt them down. Several months later, a Pinkerton wound up dead at the hands of the James brothers, and also another detective was killed by Cole and Robert Younger. Catching the James gang became a personal mission for the Pinkertons. Shortly after midnight in January 1875, a group of Pinkertons, acting on an outdated tip that Jesse and Frank were at their mother's farm, carried out a raid on the place. The agents threw an incendiary device into the farmhouse, setting off an explosion that fatally wounded Jesse and Frank's 8-year-old half-brother and caused their mother, Zerelda, to lose part of her arm. Following the raid, public support for Jesse and Frank increased, and the Missouri State Legislature even came close to passing a bill offering the men amnesty. The James brothers also launched an intimidation campaign against their perceived enemies near the farm, and in April of that year, one of their mother's neighbors, a former Union militiaman who had assisted the Pinkertons in preparing for the raid, was shot to death. Alan Pinkerton never pursued his hunt for Jesse and Frank any further. Rather than dying in a blaze of glory, the legendary Jesse James met his end on April 3, 1882, shot in the back of the head while dusting a picture on the wall of his rented home in St. Joseph, Missouri. His wife and 2 children were in a nearby room. Robert Ford, a new recruit into the James gang, had pulled the trigger, having conspired with his older brother Charlie, who was already a member of the gang. Earlier that year, Robert Ford had arranged with Missouri's governor to take down Jesse in exchange for a reward. After the Fords announced to the authorities they'd killed the infamous outlaw, they were convicted of murder and sentenced to hang. However, the governor quickly pardoned them. The public was transfixed by James's murder, and the Fords soon began reenacting the event in a traveling show. Charlie Ford committed suicide in 1884, while Robert Ford was shot to death in 1894 in a Colorado saloon. As with many famous outlaws, there was speculation and rumors that he had faked his own death. Over the years, several different men claimed to be Jesse James. In 1995, scientists seeking to resolve the question of who was buried in his grave exhumed his supposed remains from Mount Olivet Cemetery in Kearney, Missouri. After conducting DNA testing, the researchers concluded that the exhumed remains were almost certainly those of the infamous 19th century outlaw. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found some value here. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. And if you want, you can share this to your Facebook or Reddit page. Thank you.